What would you do if the person you loved tested your loyalty without telling you? Imagine waking up one morning to find out that everything you believed about your relationship was a lie, that the man you were about to marry had orchestrated your worst nightmare just to see if you'd stay. This is Miami. Glass towers pierce the sky. Yachts the size of houses float in turquoise waters. And in this world of excess, Donovan Pierce was royalty. Billionaire CEO. Self-made empire. A name that opened doors and closed deals with a single phone call. But here's the thing about having everything. You start to wonder who's real and who's just playing the part. And Donovan was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He was about to test the one woman who never needed testing. Stick around, because what happens next will change how you see love forever. Donovan Pierce didn't inherit his fortune. He built it. From sleeping in his car at 23 to running a global real estate firm by 35. He was the American dream on steroids. Every property he touched turned to gold. Every investment multiplied. Wall Street watched him. Miami worshipped him. But success came with scars. Years earlier, a business partner, someone Donovan considered a brother, had betrayed him, stolen confidential deals, leaked strategies to competitors. And why? Money. Always money. That betrayal nearly destroyed everything Donovan had built. He survived, but something inside him broke. He learned to question every smile, every compliment, every "I'm here for you" that came his way. Trust became a luxury he couldn't afford. Then he met Aria Quinn at a charity art exhibition. She wasn't there to network or impress anyone. She was there because she genuinely loved art. A teacher at a public school in Little Havana, Aria spent her days helping kids discover creativity they didn't know they had. She drove a 15-year-old Honda, lived in a modest apartment, wore clothes from thrift stores not because it was trendy, but because that's what her budget allowed. When Donovan approached her that night, she didn't recognize him, didn't know his name, didn't care about his watch or his reputation. She just talked to him about color theory and how certain paintings made her feel alive. For the first time in years, Donovan felt something real. They dated for 9 months. She never asked for expensive gifts, never posted about him on social media, never seemed impressed by the penthouse or the private jets. She just wanted him, the man beneath the money. But his past wouldn't let him trust it. Have you ever been burned by someone you trusted? Drop a comment. I read every single one. 3 months before their wedding, Donovan couldn't sleep. He'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, watching Aria breathe softly beside him. And the doubts were creeping like smoke under a door. What if she was just better at hiding it? What if the moment things got hard, she'd disappear like everyone else? His therapist told him these fears were trauma responses. His lawyer told him to get a prenup. But Donovan wanted something more definitive. He wanted proof. So he devised a test. It started with a phone call to his attorney, Marcus. They'd worked together for over a decade. Marcus knew how to make things look real. Legal documents, press releases, the whole machinery of crisis. The plan was simple but devastating. Fake a federal investigation into Donovan's company. Frozen assets. Potential criminal charges. Public disgrace. If she stays, Donovan told Marcus, I'll know it's real. If she leaves, I'll have my answer before I make the biggest mistake of my life. Marcus hesitated. Don, this is manipulative. If she finds out, she won't. And if she truly loves me, none of it will matter. 2 weeks later, the news broke. Miami's gossip columns exploded. Pierce empire under federal scrutiny. Anonymous sources leaked details about alleged fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The headlines were everywhere. Social media went wild. Donovan's phone blew up with calls from investors, friends, and reporters. He watched Aria's face when she first saw the news on her phone during breakfast. Her eyes widened. Her hand trembled slightly. She looked up at him, searching his face for answers. Don, is this real? He nodded, playing the part perfectly. They froze everything. Aria, the accounts, the properties, the business. My lawyers are fighting it, but he let his voice break just a little. I might lose everything. She put down her coffee. For a long moment, she said nothing. And in that silence, Donovan watched her like a scientist studying an experiment, looking for cracks, waiting for the mask to slip. Before I tell you what Arya did, what would you do in her position? Stay or leave? Hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. Days passed, then a week. Arya didn't ask questions, didn't cry, didn't demand to know what he'd done or how bad it really was. She just continued. But something had shifted in her movements, in her routine. Donovan noticed she was leaving earlier for work and coming home later. When he asked, she just smiled and said she'd picked up some extra tutoring sessions. He didn't think much of it until he saw her car was gone, the old Honda she'd driven since college. "Where's your car?" he asked one evening. "Sold it," she said simply, stirring pasta on the stove. "We need the money for rent and bills. I can take the bus. It's fine." Donovan felt something twist in his chest. "Arya, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." She turned to face him, her eyes clear and steady. "If you lose everything, we'll start again. I'd rather live in honesty than luxury built on lies." The next week, he discovered she'd taken a second teaching job, night classes for adult learners at a community college. She'd come home exhausted at 10 p.m., sometimes 11, and still make dinner, still ask about his day, still hold his hand when they watched TV on the couch they might not be able to keep. She never complained, never made him feel small, never looked at him with pity or resentment. One night, as they ate rice and beans because it was all they could afford, or so he thought, she reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, "even if we have to start from zero. Even if we lose the penthouse and the life everyone thinks we should have. None of that matters to me, Don. It never did." Donovan felt tears burn behind his eyes, but doubt still lingered. Maybe she's just committed to the investment, he thought. Maybe she thinks I'll bounce back, and she'll be rewarded for sticking around. He couldn't have been more wrong. What Donovan didn't know, what he couldn't see because he was too busy watching the betrayal, was that Arya had discovered his test 3 days after the fake news broke. She'd come home early one afternoon and overheard him on the phone with Marcus through the bedroom door. "The test is working perfectly," Donovan had said. "She hasn't flinched. I need to push it further, make it look worse." Arya had stood frozen in the hallway, her grocery bags heavy in her hands. As the truth crashed over her, there was no investigation, no frozen assets, no crisis, just a test. She could have confronted him right then, could have thrown the ring in his face and walked out. But instead, something else stirred inside her. Not anger, though that would have been justified. Not even hurt, though she felt that too. It was clarity. She realized that Donovan didn't need her to pass his test. He needed to see what real love looked like when it wasn't performing, when it wasn't trying to prove anything, when it just was. So she decided to show him. She sold her car, not because she had to, but because she wanted him to see that material things meant nothing. She took the extra jobs, not because they needed money, but because she wanted him to understand sacrifice. And every word she spoke, every gesture of support, came from a place of genuine love. Even knowing it was all a lie, she chose truth. This is what real loyalty looks like. If this story is hitting you, don't forget to subscribe. We explore powerful life lessons like this every week. 6 weeks into the charade, Donovan couldn't take it anymore. The guilt had become a physical weight pressing on his chest. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. and watch Arya sleep, this woman who'd given up so much for a crisis that didn't exist, and the shame would choke him. She'd proven herself 1,000 times over, and all he'd proven was that he was still broken. One Saturday evening, as the sun set over Biscayne Bay painting their penthouse in shades of amber and gold, Donovan poured 2 glasses of wine and asked Arya to sit with him on the balcony. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice already cracking. She looked at him with those steady eyes, and he saw something there he couldn't quite name. Not curiosity, not fear, just knowing. "The investigation," he continued, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "The frozen assets, all of it. It wasn't real, Arya. I made it up. His voice broke completely. "I tested you. Because I've been hurt before, and I needed to know if you loved me or my money, and I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. He waited for the explosion, for tears or screaming or something. He'd prepared himself for her anger, had rehearsed apologies, was ready to beg for forgiveness. But Arya just sat there, wine glass untouched, her face calm as still water. Then, slowly, she removed her engagement ring. The diamond caught the dying light as she placed it gently in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "If you ever want trust," she said quietly, "don't begin with deception. Arya, please. You didn't test my love, Donovan. You tested your own capacity for it." She stood up, her movements deliberate and controlled. "I knew about your test 3 days after it started. I heard you on the phone with Marcus." Donovan felt the blood drain from his face. You knew?" "I knew, and I stayed anyway. Not to pass your test, but to show you what you were too afraid to believe in." Her voice didn't waver. Real love doesn't need proof. It doesn't demand evidence. It just exists whether you trust it or not. She walked toward the door, and Donovan found himself paralyzed, unable to move or speak, or do anything but watch the best thing in his life walk away. At the threshold, she paused. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Don. I really do. But you won't find it by testing people who never deserve your suspicion." The door closed with a soft click. Not a slam, not a dramatic exit, just the quiet sound of an ending. Donovan stood alone on the balcony, the ring burning in his palm, surrounded by everything he'd built and nothing that mattered. The month that followed was the darkest of Donovan's life. He tried to reach out, calls, texts, letters. All went unanswered. He showed up at her school once, but she asked him politely to leave and respect her decision. His friends told him to move on. There are plenty of other women, they said. But Donovan knew better. There weren't plenty of women like Arya. There was only one, and he destroyed what they had with his own hands. But something else happened in those hollow months. Something shifted deep inside him. He started seeing his therapist twice a week instead of once. He journaled. He sat with his pain instead of trying to control or manipulate his way out of it. And slowly, agonizingly, he began to understand. Arya had never needed to prove anything. She'd loved him freely, without conditions, without fear. The only person who'd been on trial was him, and he'd failed spectacularly. 6 months after she left, Donovan dissolved his test-driven approach to everything. He stopped vetting every friendship, questioning every kind gesture, looking for ulterior motives in every interaction. He started actually trusting people, not blindly, but openly. Then he did something that surprised everyone who knew him. He established a foundation for underprivileged artists and educators, fully funded, no strings attached. He named it the Arya Quinn Foundation for Creative Futures. He never told her about it, didn't use it to try to win her back. He did it because it was right, and because he finally understood that real love means wanting someone to thrive even when you're not in their life anymore. Donovan became a different kind of mentor to young entrepreneurs. When they asked for business advice, he'd share the usual strategies, but he'd always end with the same story, his story, the one about testing love and losing it. "My greatest loss wasn't money," he'd tell them, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "It was the woman who proved she never cared for it. Don't make my mistake. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them. Don't test them. Don't manipulate them. Just love them back." So what would you have done? Would you have stayed like Arya, even knowing it was a test? Would you have left the moment you discovered the deception? Or would you have confronted Donovan immediately? There's no easy answer. But here's what we can take from this story. Love isn't a test. Trust isn't something you extract from people through manipulation and fear. Real loyalty shows itself naturally, quietly, in 1,000 small moments when no one's keeping score. Donovan learned too late that the only thing worth more than wealth is someone who sees you without it. Someone who chooses you not because of what you can provide, but because of who you are when everything else is stripped away. Arya never needed the penthouse or the yachts or the designer life. She just needed honesty. And when Donovan couldn't give her that, she gave herself something better. The dignity of walking away from a love that didn't trust her. Sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that you can have everything and still lose what matters most. Not because the world is cruel, but because you stop believing that real love exists. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Comment below, have you ever tested someone's love? How did it turn out? And don't forget to subscribe to Earthly Tales for more stories that'll make you think. We all have scars, but the question is, will we let them turn us into people who hurt the ones who love us most? See you in the next one.